Hey home brewers, and welcome back to Northwest Small Batch Brewing. My name is Steven, and today the video is on clearing your beer. Clear beer. I'm not going to do an intro and all that stuff because I think it'll be a nice short video today. This is an interesting topic because, there's an elephant in the room, right? You don't really need to clear your beer. I guess that's the elephant in the room. The only reason I can really think of that someone would really be like gung-ho about this is that it's maybe it's like a visual thing. You know how some people, you might see a piece of food that you just can't stand the thought of eating because not so much the flavor, but it's maybe just the way it looks. Like visually, you just can't get past that look, right? I mean, if someone put like tripe in front of you and it tastes like cotton candy, but it's still tripe and it has the visual, equivalent of like, you just, no matter how sweet it might taste, you can't get past, the visual of it. So maybe that's what it is for some people when it comes to beer. They just have this visual thing that they don't want to drink a beer that has any kind of cloudiness in it. Yeah, it could be. Or maybe you enter your beers into beer competitions. I honestly don't know if this is a thing. Maybe beer competitions, that's part of what they grade, is how clear your beer is. It'd be sad to me if that is the case, because I don't see really how that has to do with anything, but that's just my opinion. I'm one of those guys that I don't like to use any kind of like chemicals and things in my home brew, and I definitely don't want to do anything that I don't have to do unless it really affects the overall end result, like the flavor, of the beer, the consistency. Let's start with the cleanest way, shall I say. I don't know if that's the right term, but the most natural way to clear your beer. Time. Any kind of brew is going to clear given enough time. Obviously a stout is always going to be dark because it's made with, dark grain. If you let your beer sit long enough, it's going to clear on its own. Now, if you've ever watched my videos, you know that I ferment my beer for a month. So I never bottle or keg my beer until it's sat for a month. I'm just not in that huge a hurry. For me, this is a fun craft, and I want to get the most out of it. And I just don't have any. I'm not invested in rushing, to get something like a product done. It's not like I'm trying to sell it or something. So I like to take my time. And also leaving it for a month also helps, the yeast, eat back or suck back in the diacetyl that it put into the fermentation, and that way it helps clean up off flavors and that sort of thing. So, time, right? If you leave it long enough, it's going to clear. Second, cold crashing. If you have a refrigerator or some, that's big enough to hold your entire fermenter, once it's done fermenting, you can throw that whole fermenter into the fridge 24, 48 hours, and the colder, temperature will cause more material to flocculate out of suspension and settle towards the bottom of the fermenter. So that's another option. And especially if you're making like wine or something like that, where you want it more clear because you just don't want any kind of haziness or whatever in your wine. And again, it's not really going to affect the taste, so But same thing, cold crash it. If you do cold crash it, make sure that you take care with the bung and your airlock. Sometimes, the difference in temperature when you put it in the refrigerator will cause it to have, it'll suck in because of the pressure difference. And it can suck the fluid, whatever you're using, the sanitizer or alcohol that you're using in your airlock, right back down into your brew. So, I mean, what can you do? You could take the airlock off, I suppose, at that point, if it's in an enclosed refrigerator. If you're worried, you could also just replace the liquid that's in your, if you're using sanitizer, switch it out for some kind of spirit, probably a neutral spirit, depending on what you're making, like vodka, a cheap vodka or something. That way, if it pulls it in, it's just going to throw in a little extra alcohol, and it's not really going to cause any kind of flavor issues, right? It's just something to keep in mind. A lot of people have had that happen, where it sucks in the airlock fluid. All right, so the next step down the line is Irish moss. What is Irish moss? If you look it up, Irish moss is actually algae, and it grows, funny enough, like, on the coast of Ireland. And other places, but I mean, that's where it gets its name because it's plentiful there. Yeah, you just throw some Irish moss into your boil, actually, is where we usually do it. So like the last, say, 10 minutes, 15 minutes of your boil, throw in the Irish moss, and you just leave it in there. And then it doesn't come out until you're, moving your wort into a bottling bucket. I'm not going to go into the details of how it works. I just don't want to. That's not what my videos are really about. I don't think it really makes a difference unless you're just curious, biologically how that works. You could look that up. So Irish moss. What's better than Irish moss? I'm going to look at it because I always say it wrong or spell it wrong. Werflock. Werflock? I hear so many weird pronunciations of this. It's W-H-I-R, so whir, or if you're one of those people, whir, and then flock, F-L-O-C, Werflock. It's a little tablet. In fact, hold that thought. Okay, my little bag of goodies here, huh? I just figured I'd show you because I have some. Yeah, Werflock Clarifier, a blend of Irish moss and carrageenan. I don't know what carrageenan is. All I know is that you're getting two things in one. You're getting the Irish moss and a carrageenan when you use a Werflock tablet. And as you can see, the directions here, the description says, it encourages the precipitation of haze-causing materials, such as proteins and beta-glucans. And this says add it to the final 5 minutes of the boil. One tablet is good for 10 to 15 gallons. So if it's a 5-gallon batch like most of us, you want to use half a tablet. I mean, it won't hurt it to use the whole tablet, but why waste? And I'll just show you how it looks here. The funny thing is, well, I'll tell you here the funny thing, but it looks like this, and you can definitely just use a knife to kind of pop it in half. It's not difficult to break in half. Kind of like how they make hops into pellets. They've taken Irish moss and they've squished it into a pill. So half of one of these, it says the last 5. I've heard 10 or 15 minutes, whatever. Somewhere in there, the last 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 5 minutes of your boil, you throw one of these in, or half of one. What I was going to say is funny is this whole thing here, all of these things are pretty much things I don't use. That's not true. I use this. This is iodine. But I mean, I don't really, some of this stuff is old. Like I've tried it out to see how it works, and I just, pectic enzyme, not going to use it. I think that's, Beano. I will have to do a little talk about Beano in your beer one of these days, but not today. Okay, so that's what a Werflock tablet looks like. And it's the combo of those two ingredients that helps pull the proteins and stuff out to clear your beer. There is another option, which is also really super popular, and that's using gelatin. Which does a similar thing of pulling proteins and stuff out of your beer. I don't know that it pulls yeast. Here's the thing about yeast. Yeast is like in the millions and millions when it's in your beer. So you don't see it. Like the stuff you see on the bottom that's collected and flocculated out, that is not all the yeast, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to carbonate. So you usually can't even see how much more yeast is still in your beer. That being said, gelatin. Gelatin is not added to the boil, okay? It's actually added at the end of your fermentation. You can get gelatin at a homebrew store. It comes in usually a container that says like gelatin finings, and you can use that. It's more expensive than what you can get at the grocery store. So if you want to do the grocery store, just make sure you're getting unflavored gelatin at the grocery store. So don't get like, cherry jello gelatin or something like that. I know they used to sell these things called junket tablets. I think that's like just gelatin. I don't even know if they sell them anymore. I'm aging myself here, but so you take a teaspoon of gelatin for every 5 gallons of beer. Now, just like priming sugar, you want to mix the gelatin in separately to some hot water to get it to really mix in and dissolve before you pour it in. So take some hot water, like a cup of hot water, put a teaspoon of gelatin, unflavored, into it, mix it up until it's dissolved, let that cool down, all right? It's got to come down. I would suggest it comes down to 70 degrees if you can get it that low before you put it into your fermenter. Now there's lots of people who say you should stir it vigorously. Others say to gently stir it into your beer. Others say don't stir it at all. Others say pour it into a bottling bucket and then move it. Here's my suggestion. I don't know that you could really say there's one right answer, but I would suggest, because at this point you're at the end of your fermentation. You're very close to wanting to bottle this up or keg it. If you're going to try this, a couple days before you want to bottle or keg it, move your beer into a bottling bucket to get it off the yeast cake, and then gently put in that 1 cup of gelatin that's been dissolved in water. That's at now hopefully room temperature. Since you're going to leave it in there for several days, 24 to 48 hours, I don't really think you have to do a really vigorous stirring of it. I'd be concerned about that. I'm always concerned about any amount of stirring because there's always that chance that you're going to get oxygen sort of stirred into your beer, especially if you're doing an IPA or something like that. I wouldn't even take a chance. But I've had a lot of luck just being gentle, right? No splashing, just gently moving it and keeping the lid off as little as possible when you're doing this. That being said, you put the gelatin in. It's up to you whether you want to move it into a bottling bucket or a secondary bucket or not to get it off the yeast. It's going to flocculate out. A lot of people also recommend at that point you put it into a refrigerator to cold crash it. So you could combine cold crashing with the gelatin, which will cause it to even more stuff to flocculate out and settle on the bottom. And then at that point, you may have to actually move the beer again into another container to get it off of whatever just flocculated it out, over the last 24 to 48 hours from the gelatin before you bottle it or keg it. Up to you. You have to make that decision at that juncture. So those are the ways to clear your beer. And I'll just go full circle here and say you really have no reason to. Your beer is going to taste the same either way. What's the old home brewing saying that if you've read any of those old home brewing books? Relax, don't worry, have a home brew, right? Like, who cares? It's gonna taste good. Just enjoy what you made. Don't worry about it being clear. Some beers I really don't want to be clear. I love my wheat beers to be nice and foggy. All the gluten in the wheat is nearly impossible to clear, and I don't see any reason why you should try. But that is just my opinion, and you can take that to the bank. So thank you all for listening and watching. Hopefully that helps somebody if you were wondering how to maybe clear your beer a little bit before you bottle it or keg it. And it'd help me out a lot if you hit the like button. If you hit the subscribe button, you'll be notified every time I put out a new video. You know how it works. Usually every Monday is when I put out a new video. And hey, as always, happy brewing and good luck on clearing your beer. See you next time.